If you don't have the niche market you're looking for, if you don't have that, I'm just giving everybody advice and telling them what to do, you're going to get inconsistent client flow. Every single session has a purpose, has an intention, and has a structure. But it's like a football field. You can be anywhere on the field as long as you're not out of bounds. And this is a really big one. Is over-reliance on one methodology for coaching. That's why we have many different methodologies for men, for women, for couples, for business, for executives. The serious problem with coaches is they're giving advice instead of coaching.
Welcome back to the MarsVenus Coaching podcast, where we explore what it really takes to build a thriving coaching practice. Now, before we dive in, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to every one of you who has already subscribed. Knowing that this podcast is supporting your journey is really very special to us. If you're enjoying our conversation, if you're getting value from our videos, I'd love to ask you for a little favor. Please click that subscribe button below. It may seem like a small gesture, but it really means the world to us. And now, this topic of today really feels very urgent to me. Because the coaching industry is projected to reach $7 billion by the end of the year. That's a $750 million increase from last year. However, 81% of coaches do not make it past year 3. They struggle despite their training and their passion. It's not just a statistic, in my opinion. I think it's a warning. And today, I'm joined by Richard Bernstein, CEO of MarsVenus Coaching, to unpack that staggering number and, more importantly, to figure out what people can do about this. Rich, you've been coaching for well over 20 years in all different fields of coaching. And why do they not succeed? And how can we help them in this conversation to turn that around?
Well, I will tell you, Helmut, one of the number one mistakes that coaches make when they first get out into the field is they have no real clear niche. They just try to, I want to serve everyone. There's no specialty. So they really try to grab a client here and a client there, regardless of what are the issues, or they never really establish an expertise for themselves. And that's a really important one. Here at MarsVenus, we always focus on gender intelligent coaching, whether it's on executive coaching with leaders, leading men and women, or it's in a relationship, men and women. That dynamic is our specialty, and all of our coaches become experts in that. I can apply that expertise in different areas, different life situations or business situations or corporate situations, but you have to have a niche market. And most coaches don't understand that. So they just want to coach everybody on any topic, kind of like a big wide net, instead of establishing that clear, what is my niche?
You said gender intelligence before. Do you want to just quickly explain what that means for those of us who don't understand that term?
Well, we look at the dynamic, the way a brain is wired differently in a man and a woman, how their hormones are different, and how does that affect their attitude, their behavior, their leadership skills in a relationship. All of that has to do with our harmonious relationship, which is what coaching is teaching people to have better and harmonious relationships. So our specialty, our expertise is gender intelligence. But a lot of coaches go into coaching with no clear niche market. They just want to coach anybody. They want to serve everybody, and there's no specialization. So they're not actually creating a niche for themselves, an expertise that I would come to you for. That's a big mistake that they make. That's probably one of the biggest, but there's many others.
What would you recommend someone who is in that trap, who doesn't really have a clear niche?
Well, the first thing I would tell them to do is find what you love to coach on. What subject are you really good at? What is the actual avatar or that unique selling proposition? Who are you really, so that you can establish an expertise, so you can let the world know that you're really good at that. That's what the first thing they have to do. The second thing they have to do is start developing that expertise. That's another big mistake that coaches make, is they're not developing themselves at the same time. They're not growing and learning and developing in that particular expertise. So that's the second thing I would tell them to do, is read everything you can, watch everything you can, take a course on that, whatever that is, because it doesn't matter. Everybody needs something. And then you'll learn to market to that niche, but you have to be developing yourself, which is one of the second biggest problems. They don't continue to grow and learn themselves. The serious problem with coaches is they're giving advice instead of coaching. They're literally giving people advice. And I even mentioned this on a previous episode where we talked about giving people advice. Oh, I already tried that. Well, what about this? Oh, I already tried that. You only need 3 of those before they say, oh, I don't want to work with you because everything you've recommended. And so that's a big pitfall that a lot of coaches fall into, is giving advice instead of helping them find the solution through steering your questions. And how you steer those questions, they come up with it themselves. They're proud of it. They believe it's going to work because it came out of their mouth. And if it doesn't work, guess what? You're a bad coach. They blame you. Well, either they blame you or they don't put their heart into it to do it well because it wasn't their idea. It was your idea. And if you told me to do it, maybe it'll work. I'll give it a shot. If it came out of my mouth, I believe it'll work. It's going to work. So that's one of the keys to being a good coach, but it's also one of the mistakes coaches make, is giving too much advice.
What if it's good advice? I'm sure that happens as well, right?
Yes, but you still want it to come out of their mouth, not yours. So it can be good advice. There's a lot of advice I've given, but not saying you should or you need to do this. Do you know what I mean? So I'm giving the advice, but it's not coming out of my mouth. That's the skill, the art form of being a good coach, is asking steering questions so that the answer that you know will work comes out of their mouth, not yours.
But what's the advantage? I'm not quite clear on the advantage of that.
Because if it comes out of their mouth, it's their idea. If it's their idea, they're more confident that it'll work because they came up with it. It's not like you told them you should do this. Big difference between you saying you should do this and them saying, I think this would work for me. The idea was theirs. The strategy was theirs. The action steps were theirs. So they're confident in themselves. They believe it's going to work because they came up with it. Remember, we're not advising people what to do. We're helping them find the best solution for themselves.
When they discover the solution for themselves, they feel empowered.
Yes.
And they're more likely to stay with you because you give them that sense of empowerment.
And confidence, and that they're smart. They know what's best for themselves. I want them to find the solution using my series of questions to come up with the best solution for them.
And do you have any special, teach that in a special way at MarsVenus Coaching?
Yes, we do. We teach you how to use a process called narrative therapy, where you continue to drill down into what the client said, peeling back the onion and steering them toward a solution for them. Yes, that's an actual process that we teach at MarsVenus.
Mistake number 3. What's another thing? New coaches, experienced coaches. What about business? What about the business model?
Well, I think another big mistake that coaches make is poor listening skills. You know what I mean? It's their agenda. And when it's your agenda, not the client's agenda, that's why having such good listening skills is critical, to not let 1 or 2 or 3 of those words get by you. You know what I mean? You want to be able to be a really good listener. And it's so important when you're listening that you're not making assumptions. You're not being judgmental, that you're literally a sounding board, a confidant, that you're hearing them and regurgitating what they're saying so they hear it, and being a good listener without assumptions. That's a really big one, especially those that interrupt a lot. They'll be in a session with a client and they finish the sentence, or they interrupt them, or do you know what I mean? They're just not good listeners in a session. To me, that's a really big mistake.
I sometimes experience that with bad customer support, when they sort of fall into the sentence, and it does make you feel
you're not appreciated also, but you're also not hearing me. You're not listening to me, because listening and hearing are 2 different things. So if I don't quite hear you, but I have my own agenda and I'm just, well, interrupt you. And what do you mean by that? And, that doesn't work. You really have to show the client that you are there for them, that you are really good at not just listening to them, but hearing them, understanding them. Yeah. That is probably one of the most important, if we were going in order, is those listening skills.
So we have find your niche, do not give advice.
Right. And don't assume. Because that's a really big one when you're listening. You're not assuming, because you don't know the situation of that client. So one of the things my coach told me 25 years ago is play dumb, drill down. I said to the guy, I don't play dumb well. He said, okay, well, just don't assume. Don't assume anything. You don't know that person's, what's behind that or what's underneath that. And
Yeah,
being a really good listener, let them finish their sentence, finish their thought before you jump in with your next question.
makes sense. Number four, what's your
Number four, and this is a really big one,
Mm,
is over-reliance on one methodology for coaching. I
mm,
think it's so important that everybody's different, their needs are different. Like I said, you can't assume because you don't know that particular circumstance or situation. So having one methodology is a big problem for coaches. That's why we have many different methodologies for men, for women, for couples, for business, for executive. There's a lot of different methodologies. We take them through the same process, but use different methodologies in doing it. And this is so important. Don't be so rigid in how you're coaching them that, nope, you got to follow this process. And there's no flexibility or rigidness, on your part that no, I understand your dog died, but we got to get back to your 90-day plan. It doesn't work like that. People are human, and in that human touch, you have to be able to have different methodologies that work for different personality types, different gender, different generation. I coach baby boomers different than Gen Z.
I remember us talking about how, you have a fixed framework, where you in one session you do this, then you do that, then you do that, then you go
Yes.
for the 90 day, you go for your 90-day plan.
Yes, every single session has a purpose, has an intention, and has a structure. But it's like a football field. You can be anywhere on the field as long as you're not out of bounds. So there's the structure, is the field itself. Within that, you've got to have some flexibility. You got to be different for this person as opposed to that person. You have to be different for, like I said, a millennial than you are with an X or a boomer or Y generation. You have to be flexible for that. You have to be flexible for the personality type, whether they're a D, I, S, or C. You have to be flexible whether they're a man or a woman or you're coaching a couple. You see what I mean? It's within that playing parameter,
Yeah.
but you still have flexibility inside the field.
Would you pick the type of generation you would want to work with as well as in your niche
Absolutely.
field?
Yes. When you talk about having that very specific niche, are you
Mhm.
going to coach baby boomers? You're going to coach X, Y, millennium, Gen Z. What is your target market? I'm very good with baby boomers because I happen to be one. I'm also very good with D personality types because I happen to be one. Do you see what I mean? So it's not just who's my ideal or target market. What kind of personality do they have? Are they a man or a woman? What generation are they in? These are all the things I'm talking about, having a clear niche.
Number five.
This is probably the number one. To keep learning. I need to keep developing. I need to keep walking the talk. I need to keep incorporating this into my life, into my relationship, into my business. So not focusing on self-growth as a coach is one of the biggest problems because we've talked a few times about mindset. And in my opinion, mindset comes from continue to grow. There is a universal law in the world, in the universe. If you're not growing, you're dying. And a lot of coaches believe I've arrived. I don't need to grow anymore. I'm doing fantastic. I'm getting clients. No. If you're not growing, how are you going to continue to have your clients grow with you?
Okay, I completely agree with, but it's quite interesting because that statistics that I quoted before, where those experts pointed to unsustainable business model, inconsistent client flow, and lack of business skill. We haven't really talked about that.
Because all of that starts with mindset. So if you don't have the niche market you're looking for, if you don't have that, I'm just giving everybody advice and telling them what to do, you're going to get inconsistent client flow. They're talking about the problem. I'm talking about what's going on underneath that problem that creates that problem. You understand? So to me, that inconsistent flow of clients is because of all five of these. They're not continuing to grow. They're not good listeners. They don't have clear boundaries. They're giving people advice and they have no niche. Of course, you're going to have inconsistent results from your coaching.
Okay. Do you do it differently at MarsVenus Coaching?
Well, first of all, we teach our coaches how to have clear niche market. Yes, we are underneath that gender intelligence, but on top of that, we want them to have what's the personality type, what's the generation, what specific niche market do you want to go into? So we help them craft that. But to be really good listeners, and we give them some tools to be good listeners, like narrative therapy, like some of the tools that we're giving, like the alignment and the crafting of the 90-day plan, how we take them methodically through a process that teaches them to be a good listener, teaches them to have that niche market, teaches them not to give people advice, teaches them how not to assume and be judgmental at all. How do you keep that distance and still the connection? And we teach them to keep growing.
And what about the business? I mean, coaches need clients.
Correct. And if you don't have all these in order, you're going to have inconsistent client flow, if at all, if you get clients at all. At MarsVenus, we use the workshop model for client acquisition. So we teach them how to market for the workshop, how to do a workshop, because that builds their credibility, how to take the attendees through a sales process, and then how to coach them using gender intelligence. It's a 4-part process of implementing your coaching business. So when you talk about strategy, we don't have to teach strategy. We give it to them. Here is the strategy. Most coaches learn how to coach, not how to market or sell or find a niche or how to shut your mouth, how to do all of that. But literally, oh, I now know how to coach. Where do I start in the marketplace? I go out there and I look around and go, what do I do? But we have that strategy built in for you. But you got to have these 5 underlying mistakes handled so that when you start getting clients, they are being successful. They see the progress. And then you have not only sustainable clients, but long-term.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Anything else we haven't talked about that you do want to pass on to our viewers, our listeners?
So do yourself a favor if you're thinking about being a coach or you know you want to be a coach, because most coaches tell me they already knew they wanted to be. They just couldn't make that leap. I recommend be very selective in the school, do a little bit of homework, talk to their coaches, talk about the success they've had, the kind of training. What impact did it have on the coach's life, not just the client's life? Because if the school impacted your life, then you're going to impact others. That's the advice I can give.
Cool. Well, I think we'll leave it at that. Thanks again, Rich, for your time. I will put some information about MarsVenus Coaching in the description. If you found this podcast interesting, if it helps you avoid making those mistakes in the future, then do subscribe to the channel. And if you would like to find out more about MarsVenus Coaching and what it takes to become a MarsVenus coach, then click the link below, book yourself a call, a free complimentary clarity call, and we'll be more than happy to speak to you. Thank you very much. See you next time.